Hey there, today I'm going to look over some of my favorite generic team tactic cards in a update since the last video because of the banned and restricted list. Well, at least my favorite ones for right now. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. So, about 3 months ago, I made a video about my top 10 generic team tactic cards to simply have some recommended cards that can easily fit into just about every list. Then a couple of months later, the banned and restricted list was released, and unsurprisingly, there was a fair bit of overlap between those two lists. So for anyone looking to fill the void left by the BNR, or just looking for some fun new tech to try out, I present an updated generic tactic card list. Kind of, anyways. There are cards from my previous list that I'm going to touch on, but not really go too far in depth with because I've already talked about them at length in my other video. I'll have a tag for it at the end of this one. So to get started, I'm going to dedicate 2 spots on this list to the restricted durability cards: Field Dressing, Patch Up, Med Pack, and Brace for Impact. All of these cards are still fantastic and probably will end up eating 2 of your tactic card slots because of their generic usefulness. That is, unless you are running Doom Prophecy to get off a big attack turn, but I am currently using Field Dressing and Med Pack as my 2 restricted cards of choice. However, once Magneto comes out, or if the Asgardians see a resurgence in popularity, Brace for Impact might become more important to have. So keep an eye on your local games and see what you're finding. Only time will ultimately tell, though. So, if those cards take up 2 slots, I want to bring up some other repeats from my last list that I'm still using a lot. First off, Disarm and Advanced R&D are still routinely among my favorite cards that can be used to great effect, whether that's in the early or late rounds of a game. Another card I'm letting roll over is Mission Objective. It is not a card that should be brought to every crisis, but when it is brought to a Kree Power Core or Wakandan Herb, well, that's a pretty big point swing for a single tactic card. Which leaves me with roughly 5 spots to fill in, and the first one I want to mention is another objective-specific card, Hired Muscle. This tactic card comes with Wilson Fisk, which makes perfect thematic sense, and it synergizes really well with the Secure Crisis that comes with Kingpin as well. Hired Muscle is an active card that allows any character to spend 1 power. Each civilian token that is within range 3 of that character is then placed within range 2 of its current position. So I think this is obvious enough to say, but don't bring this card where none of the objectives are civilians because this becomes a dead card. But the early game implications of stealing away a spider-infected civilian or any other civilian type is really strong. And even if you aren't able to use this card earlier in the game, you could still at least reposition a faraway civilian that your opponent dropped, but most of its potential is for early game shenanigans. Another card that has been out a while now but has captured my attention anew is No Matter the Cost. It is a reactive card that triggers when a character declares an attack action during their activation. They can then suffer 1 to 3 damage to play this card. Reduce the power cost of that attack by the amount of damage suffered. So at a glance, this card has some cute synergies with Drax and Hulk to take damage to make their attacks more dangerous, while saving them power at the same time. Now that is still a very viable way to use this card, but now characters with the new Healing Factor keyword that will heal them at the end of their activation, this card has even more specific instances where it can be used with a very high potential. But what is really nice about it is that as long as you have a character that you want to be aggressive with a big attack, No Matter the Cost can get you that big attack to help get the job done. Quick side note for this one, don't reduce your stamina to 0 with the card. Your character will instantly be dazed or KO'd before they can get the attack off, and you'll just be sad. But keeping in theme with cards that let you pull off powerful effects at a steep cost is All You've Got. This is a reactive team tactic card that costs 4 power to play and can only be played by a character with a threat value of 6 or less. This card is played at the end of a character's activation, and instead of them gaining an activation token, your turn does not end and that character must activate again. At the end of their second activation, they are dazed if they were healthy, and if they were injured, they will be KO'd and instantly removed from the board. So needless to say, this card's effect is powerful. Any character getting an extra 2 actions is going to be strong, especially for anyone who has an effect that will last until the end of the turn, like Black Panther with his mantle. There are some characters though who still benefit from it but are hindered a bit, like Thor, who can't suddenly get off a second throw with Strongest Avenger or a second charge with For Asgard, since those are both once per turn abilities. And this is still technically the same turn as the first one. This can be used in conjunction with the restricted Doom Prophecy to devastating effect, but even outside of that combo, it can help push a character to finish off an important enemy or get in position to play a card when it is needed most. But they do pay the price for it quite dearly themselves. For the fourth new card, I'm actually going to bring up 2, Climbing Gear and Extreme Conditioning. Both of these cards provide extra mobility for your team, and it really helps even more now that drop-off is banned. Each works in their own way. Extreme Conditioning is cheaper on the cost of power and will allow the next move action that is an advance to use the long movement tool, while Climbing Gear gives a free short move and provides the wall crawler keyword until the end of the round. Really, this is an excellent way to give some extra mobility to a slow-moving character that would otherwise have trouble getting around the battlefield. Candidates that first come to mind are characters like MODOK, Magneto, and Venom. Personally, I have found more use to come from Climbing Gear if your character can typically afford the cost of 1 power extra, because it doesn't require the use of an action. As well, 2 short moves is just a bit further than 1 long move, so even if you're going to spend an action to move anyways, Climbing Gear is still the better option if you have easy access to the power for that character. And the final card I want to talk about is Marked for Death. This card in my mind is the objective-minded version of Disarm, whether you're needing to dish out some damage on a sneaky character, or just slow them down enough to make them not get to where your opponent wants them. Marked can do the job. It is an active card that requires 2 allied characters to spend 1 power while within range 5 of an enemy character. That enemy character loses and cannot gain stealth, their movement speed becomes slow, and it cannot modify or reroll defense dice until the end of the round. So if you're trying to play an objective-focused game against the likes of Web Warriors, this card is going to be spectacular. And even if you aren't, but the objectives end up being spread out, Marked might still be worth it. Being able to slow down a character that would move around a lot to hit buttons on objective like spider portals or origin bombs makes this card very useful. It is also a good way to stop an enemy from getting a field dressing off when a character like Wong or Black Widow needs to double move to get to that dazed character. While this one is no means an auto-include, it has some pretty fun play, and with more and more characters having the stealth special rule, the more valuable this card is going to become. So that is my 5 new generic tactic cards that might be worth bringing in your next game if you haven't got to try them out already. If you have any questions about the game or this list, feel free to reach out. I have some links down below for ways you can get in touch with me. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.